So in this section of chapter 4, we are going to be talking about the verb avoir. So to remind us where we've been, in mot 1, we talked about our families, and in mot 2, we learned to describe our home and our neighborhood. So today, with the verb avoir, we're going to be able to talk about our age, find out other people's ages, and start to build some more sentences with this new verb. So avoir is going to be able to express the things that you have because the verb avoir means to have. So what you'll notice is the verb avoir is irregular, and it's irregular in that there is no easy pattern to figure out how to conjugate this and match it with those subjects, kind of like the verb être that we learned in Chapitre 1, Chapitre 2. So this isn't easy to memorize like those ER verbs, but this is a really unique verb and it's super important in the French language. So you have the conjugation ai to go with the pronoun je, j'ai. For example, if I was going to say I have a dog, I would say j'ai un chien. To match the verb avoir with the subject tu, you'd say tu as, as. For example, you could ask a friend a question like tu as une sœur? Do you have a sister? For the subjects il, elle, and on, it's just the letter A and it's pronounced a. So you could say about somebody, elle a un chat. Il a un frère. She has a cat or he has a brother. To match the verb avoir with the subject nous, it's spelled A-V-O-N-S and it's avons. So nous avons, it's pronounced nous avons. So if I were talking about my family, I might say nous avons une maison. We have a house. To match the verb avoir with the pronoun vous, you're going to use A-V-E-Z, vous avez. So for example, you could ask somebody, vous avez des enfants? Do you have children? And finally, to match the verb avoir to the pronouns il and elle plural, you're going to use O-N-T. So ils ont or elles ont. So I could say ils ont un appartement, elles ont un balcon. They have an apartment, they have a house. So those are some ways, and the way I remember how to conjugate these, there are some easy tricks for tu. We know that with ER verbs, those ER verbs tend to end in the ending ES. So I remember AS goes with tu. And for nous, it has that familiar ONS ending. For vous, it has that familiar easy ending. And for il and elle plural, you can kind of fudge it that when you've got an ER verb, those would end in ENT. So avoir's conjugation is pretty similar to ONT. So those are some easy tricks to remember how to conjugate avoir. So let's take some looks at examples of how we can use the verb avoir. So what you're going to do on your Pear Deck is you're going to write some example sentences. And what I want you to do is I want you to look at creating a sentence with those sentence starters about your family. So you'll say, en ma famille, j'ai, and you'll list out some things you have. So for example, talking about my family right now, I might say, en ma famille, j'ai un mari, un chat, et un chien. And then I'm going to say something I don't have in my family, remembering to change that indefinite article un, un, or des to de or the apostrophe. So right now about my family, I might say, en ma famille, je n'ai pas d'enfants. I don't have any kids. So I'm going to give you a minute. Feel free to pause the video to respond in your Pear Deck. All right. So we'll talk about everybody's example sentences next class. And now let's look at some examples of how we can use the verb to have in ways that we might not use it in English. For example, in French, you use the verb avoir to express age. So that sounds a little funny in English, right? Like I have 14 years. In English, we'd say I am 14 years old. I am 35 years old. But in French, you're going to use the verb to have. So the question you'll hear people ask is, tu as quel âge? What age are you? And so you answer with, oh, moi, j'ai 14 ans, j'ai 17 ans, j'ai 29 ans. So you're going to use that I have, and then a number, and then put the word en for years. So that's exactly what we're going to do in our next slide. So here's another interactive slide on your Pear Deck. And it's asking you, et toi, tu as quel âge? So you've actually got this really awesome sentence starter. Moi, j'ai. That's how you can start your sentence. And then you've got a little guide to the numbers on the right side of your screen. I tried to figure out all the numbers we might need in class. So for me, obviously my number is not going to be on there because I'm a little bit older than 19. So I'd say, moi, j'ai 27 ans. One of your parents might say, moi, j'ai 40 ans. So feel free to pause the video to be able to respond on the Pear Deck, and we're going to talk about everybody's ages in class next time. And so the final place that we really use the verb avoir, we've already seen this phrase, it's il y a, means there is or there are. And so we have il, which means he, and I, which literally means there, and a means is a version of to have. But it literally means there is or there are. And so you can use it in a way like, il y a un jardin autour de la maison. There's a garden around the house. I could say, il n'y a pas de fleurs dans le jardin. There aren't any flowers in the garden. And it's important to notice here, and I want to I can't get it to work. I want to show you that N apostrophe goes before the E, and the pas goes after the A. So when you've got a negative sentence where you're using il y a to say there are not or there is not, you'll say il n'y a pas. There are not or there is not. So now we're going to use this il y a and il n'y a pas in our own example sentences. So it's asking, et chez toi, qu'est-ce qu'il y a? What do you have? So, and at your house, qu'est-ce qu'il y a? What is there? What are there? So here you can describe parts of your house that you really like, or parts of the place that you live, and what it has. So, chez moi, il y a une grande cuisine. J'aime beaucoup. There's a big kitchen. I really like it. And then I'm going to highlight something my house doesn't have. So, chez moi, il n'y a pas de balcon. Il n'y a pas de station de métro. I'm sure most of us don't have a subway station in our house. So what I'm going to have you do is on your Pear Deck, you're going to use that interactive slide, and you are going to add in those things that your house does and doesn't have. And that is the end of our Pear Deck for today. So you've got some interaction to do. Feel free to scroll up and down, take a look at these, and then head on over to the notes section.